Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you my league start currency strategy for the Heist League. So as always, I am going to be target farming, min-maxing, and trying to figure out the new league mechanic. So just like before, we're going to be starting straight from the Blood Aqueducts, trying to make this thing work and extract all the secrets of making money out of it. This video is going to be going into how I plan to do that initially. So hopefully you guys are keen as I am for the Heist League, and let's get straight into it. So to begin with, of course, we need to take a look at what character you're probably going to want to play initially. So Heist is, of course, not a mapping mechanic. It's actually the first mechanic which I've seen in a long time in PoE that is going to be a true alternative to mapping. It's kind of a fork in the road. You can either map or you can do contracts. They're both separate items and they're very, very similar in how they function. You can alch them, all that kind of stuff like that. And in my opinion, from all the information we have right now, you should be able to sustain them infinitely. There's going to be players who have contracts who don't want to run them and they're going to sell them in the hundreds. That may not be the case early on, but later on, similar to how people were selling thousands and thousands of seeds in Harvest, there's going to be players who sell a ton of contracts. So I think it's completely viable to make your character as a pure heist character and just do heists all day long. In addition to that, you're able to trade the Heist exclusive currency rogue markers for contracts in the Heist hideout or whatever it's called. There'll be a vendor there at Quintazana and you can just buy contracts. So let's go from day one though. How are we going to get into this Heist content? So initially, I would recommend making a very, very clear speed-based character if you're interested in target farming this content. I wouldn't worry too much about durability or anything like that, as tier 1 content or low tier content isn't very challenging and I wouldn't expect you to get one shot. So for that reason, I'm going to go with a tried and true. I'm going to make a bird character and I'm going to be blazing through tier 1 maps and Blood Aqueducts as quickly as I can to build up a massive wealth of contracts. And that's where we will begin the min-maxing. Now, as an additional benefit to that, the tier 1 maps are actually very, very good this league. We've got Volcano, which drops Comb's Heart cards, and we've also got Tower, which drops the Nurse card. So if you get a one-off there, that can really turbocharge your gear progression. In addition to that, the last two maps aren't bad. Mausoleum is a pretty decent layout if you skip the boss, and Park is just flat out an awesome layout in general. So I will also give a bit of a hint. There is a prophecy that will kickstart your tier 1 map pool if that's what you want to do, and I will be using that. So tier 1 maps, farm the absolute living daylights out of them and get a ton of contracts, and that's where we can get into the heist content and start understanding how to min-max it. So for that, let's bring up a little bit of a chart I've done here and we'll have a quick chat about it. So, of course, we have maps here. We've just talked about that. We've been farming maps. What's going to drop in maps? So maps are going to drop rogue markers and they're going to drop contracts. So to begin with, if any other league is a good indication, higher tiers will drop more rogue markers, so higher stacks of them, and they'll also drop higher item level contracts. So that's going to be important later on, but it's not too important now as we're just kind of getting into it. But that will most likely be a very big thing later on. Higher amounts of rogue markers will probably be very important for buying contracts off of the contract vendor, as well as unveiling blueprints, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So of course we want to stack up a ton of contracts and we want to stack up the rogue markers that are going to allow us to run them. We don't have too much information on the actual rogues themselves, but we will be able to gear them up with essentially rewards that allow us to pick up more chests in each contract, as well as a trinket slot, which is a new item for the league, which is going to be equipable to us, which will scale the rewards of contracts. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because gearing up your rogues and getting a very good thief or rogue trinket is going to be absolutely essential to increasing the amount of wealth you're getting from your contracts. So just a quick look at these will actually show you what I mean. So if we just scroll down really quickly here, to the Thieves Trinkets. It's very important to point out just how massive the multipliers on this thing is. So we're not going to look at the Regal to Exalt thing because I think that could either be very good or very bad, but just already 41% chance to drop double maps and 44% chance to drop double scarabs. So having a good Thieves Trinket already off the bat should be your number one priority if you're planning on farming contracts. You're going to want to look up the mods that it can roll online and have a live search going as fast as possible to get the best one possible. Because 50% more scarabs could just be 50% more loot for your run straight away. And then you've also got stuff like that for, double maps. I'm sure there's other stuff for that as well. So that's very, very, very important. Similarly, with your rogues gear, stuff like this is like 11% increased time for lockdown. That could give you more time to loot. Reduced hiring fee, that gives you more rogue markers to buy more contracts, and that'll kind of stack up more and more and more. And there's also things like reduced alert level, which is going to let you loot more chests per heist. So essentially all of this gear that you're going to be getting and trying to build up on your crew and yourself is going to multiply the amount of loot you get out of your heists, both in tier 1 all the way up to T16 heists. So it's very, very important that you prioritize that stuff early. Okay, so we're running these contracts. What can we expect to get for loot? What are we thinking that there's going to be there? So we know for sure there's going to be maps, there's going to be scarabs, and I think it's a pretty safe bet that there's going to be pretty much every reward that you could imagine from the Delirium League. And it's probably going to be a fairly similar amount, I would imagine, to what we were seeing from that league. So it's probably going to be an extremely lucrative league, especially when you stack on all of that Thieves Trinket stuff and chance to get double. It's going to be extremely powerful. And I think early on, even if you don't get that massive scarab drop or whatever like that, you're going to be able to use the rare items from the chests or whatever. If you think Delve, that drops a lot of rares for the Chaos recipe to kind of keep funneling gear into your character. So rewards, what can we expect? Big league rewards, currency, breachstones, scarabs, essences, all of that kind of stuff like that. Fossils. And also a ton of rares. We can expect a lot of rares to fuel our Chaos recipe to, get that Tabula, get that whatever Death's Opus if you're going for that, or maybe even get some Void Batteries or something like that if you're going for Assassin or something like that. So very, very good. I think it's going to be a very strong option, even as early as tier 1 maps. So let's move on from basic contracts. What's after basic contracts? So in contracts, we can drop blueprints. And for blueprints, they're essentially a massive contract, which have an exclusive reward at the end. So how do we get blueprints and what are they requiring to activate them? So we get blueprints from contracts. They're essentially kind of like the big breachstone of this league, or the temple from Incursion, or the simulacrum from, all that kind of stuff like that. They're the end game thing. To do a blueprint, you're going to need intelligence, which you accumulate by doing contracts. And if you're main spec heist, you're going to have a ton of intelligence, so you're going to be able to do these things fairly often, in my opinion. In addition to that, in order to use the intelligence to activate the blueprint, you're going to need rogue markers as well. So that's where all of that rogue gear comes in. You're going to want to get more and more of these rogue markers. It's going to allow you to run more blueprints. So blueprints, why do we want to run blueprints? Of course, they're going to drop more of everything that drops in contacts, so like breachstones, scarabs, all that kind of stuff like that. But they're also going to drop the league-specific rewards. And depending on what you're doing, low maps or high maps, you're going to want to pick those rewards carefully. One of the perks of blueprints is, depending on how much intelligence you use, you're actually going to know which rewards are where in these layouts, and it's going to allow you to choose, because you're only allowed to choose one reward per blueprint, to my understanding. You're going to want to unveil and pick accordingly. So let's say that there's 5 possible options. Depending on the tier of map, you're going to want to choose very well. So there's alt quality gems. Some of these look pretty good. A lot of them look pretty bad. There's, I think, 800 in total, and I only counted like 4 or 5 of them, which seem like really, really powerful. So this one could be not too great, but you may want to consider doing it. The reason it's here, though, is because it's not item level sensitive. You can pick up a low map and get an alt quality gem. And it's probably going to be the same as a high map alt quality gem. So you could get a best in slot alt quality gem there. And some of these do look like they're on the power level of awakened gems, which is quite exciting. The other thing you can get is an alt quality unique. So these are essentially the replica uniques. I'm sure there will be a few chase replica uniques. And these are probably also not item level sensitive, so you could go for them in low maps as well. So if you're doing low maps, I would recommend either going for alt quality gems or alt uniques. You can also consider going for thief trinkets. However, I think a lot of the best in slot thief trinkets will require high item level, but if you need to start out, you can just go for a low item level thief trinket just to have one on, or maybe you need to sell some of these to other players because they just want to get one on. So it could also be an option. So for your blueprints, if you're doing low tiers, I would go for those 3 options as they're not too item level sensitive. Now, if you go to high maps, you're now starting to look at crafting bases. You want to go for stuff like enchanted bases, which are essentially bases like weapons and chest piece, I believe, that have an enchant on them, which is very powerful. It's essentially going to be like 15 to 20% more stats on them, which is going to be extremely coveted for crafters. Now, the crafters are only going to want this at maximum item level. So that's either going to be 86 or 83. Depending on the base. So it's only viable to do this if you're doing the very highest heists. Otherwise, you should come back and look at the low maps rewards. Now, the next thing is going to be experimented bases. This is, again, another crafting base. So you're going to want it at a high item level for all of those premium stats with like tier 1 and all that ton of stuff like that. So again, high maps only. Pretty much T16 heists is where you want to be using these 2 rewards. You may also have Thief's Trinkets in here. Again, it depends on how the mods scale and what kind of item level breakpoints you need on those. So essentially, if you're doing blueprints and you get to those final rooms, you want to do alt quality gems, alt uniques, and Thief's Trinkets probably in low maps. And then if you're doing high maps, you want to look at these 3 things here, which is super, super cool. So, what is the overall flow that you want to be looking at day 1? So you want to pick a fast character, absolutely. You want to get to Blood Aqueducts or maps as soon as possible. Start up that Chaos Recipe to start getting you some gear and get some contracts under your belt. Once you've got those contracts and a few rogue markers, I would definitely recommend getting in there and running them because I'm pretty sure that the rewards are going to far outstrip those of maps. You can use the tier 1 map Prophecy, I can't remember its name, to get a truckload of those, which is going to be very, very lucrative for you. You probably don't even need to worry about progressing the Atlas too much if contracts turn out to be very good for you, and you can kind of just stick to there and level up your rogues and get all that going. Get that rogue gear as quickly as possible, so Thief's Trinkets and the rogue kind of like cloaks and all that stuff like that, to make it so you can stay in the heist and get more rewards. Which is going to be very good. Make sure that we check out the contract vendor. If it's super expensive, it'll kind of suck, but if it's really cheap, you might just be able to buy out all the contracts every single time and then just go infinite on day 1, which is going to be really awesome. If you can't go infinite, you'll have to go back to your super fast mapping in tier 1s, but that shouldn't be too bad because you picked a clear speed character. So next up, if you've got a ton of intelligence and you finally get that blueprint drop, you can probably unveil all of it, see what all of these kind of rewards look like, and then dive in. I would probably recommend going for alternate uniques early because a lot of uniques sell for much higher premium on days 1 to 3 because people just need power and they need it now. So that's probably what I'll be going for. But you could also look into going for Thief's Trinkets as a second option. And finally, alt quality gems. You could look at going in for that, but I don't think it's too great. After that, you can kind of reassess things. Once you get to the point where your speed clear character is pretty good and you're looking to kind of graduate and potentially tackle those higher heists to get the enchanted bases money and experimented bases money. This is probably going to be later on in the league when crafters have a little bit more money and they're looking to make those very powerful items. you're going to want to look at making a durable character. And the reason for that is because of the contraband rule. At low tiers, you're probably not going to die too much because you're going to be one-shotting everything. But at higher tiers, you absolutely might get one-shot randomly by some rare. So you're probably going to want to look at making a very, very speedy, tanky, high damage build. And the one that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to trade out my bow character. I'll still keep it around for doing T16 maps and getting higher tier contracts quickly. But I'm going to trade it out for an Assassin Blade Vortex character using Badge of the Brotherhood. I think that's probably going to be the best heister for high tier maps, simply because it has massive defense, it has massive offense, and it's actually the fastest character in the game, which is well rounded. So I think that's going to be my strategy for high heisting, and I think that's probably where the ultimate money is going to be, mainly in these enchanted bases and experimented bases. So, and maybe some thieves trinkets, but we'll have to see. So that's going to be my strategy, guys. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed, but we do have a few bonus things here. Whoa, what's going on here? So I have a few off-the-wall strats here that you might want to look into, and the main one is going to be fracturing blueprints. So lastly, we had an absolute blast fracturing 5 Delirium Orb maps. That was super duper fun, and the same possibility remains for fracturing blueprints. Let me paint you guys a picture. So let's say you bring up a blueprint and it's got insane rewards. It's T16 and you've fully uncovered it with all your intelligence. Maybe, because it is actually a rare craftable item, you will actually be able to fracture it. You'll be able to use a fractured fossil on it and create a mirrored version of that blueprint. Now the question is, will it keep all of its intelligence and unveiling intact? My guess is that it will, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to just alch it. It would lose all its blueprint intelligence if you alched it, and there's no difference here, you're just duplicating it. So you should keep it all, and it should remain intact. So you should potentially, tentatively, in the end game, be able to chain fractured blueprints fully uncovered without the need to get more intelligence. That is going to be my ultimate strategy, and I'm going to be trying to get there as quickly as possible to check it out. But I thought I would share. So what's holding this back is obviously, will they keep intelligence and how expensive blueprints are. If blueprints are only like 50C, then of course you're not going to want to use a 2x fractured fossil on it, especially if the rewards don't turn out to be that good. But we'll just have to see how expensive they are. If they're very expensive, then of course we're going to be fracturing them heaps, which is going to be very, very cool indeed. It's essentially being able to generate pure Cholula Breachstones is kind of what's in my head, what I'm thinking it'll be, but we'll just have to see indeed. Of course, then we also have to figure out which is better, low heist or high heists, and we also need to min-max our road gear and our thieves trinkets. But those will all be videos that'll be coming up. I'm going to try and give more frequent updates on what I'm thinking and what I'm discovering throughout the league, so you guys have the cutting edge of information. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the Heist League. I'm super pumped. Hopefully you guys are too, and I'll see you guys then. Cheers.